Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you're having a great Wednesday, and whether you're joining us from here in Tucson or in Phoenix, across the state, across the nation, or somewhere else in the world, we're so glad that you were able to join us. We also like to send a welcome from our Senior Vice President for Health Sciences, Dr. Michael Dake. And of course, we certainly want you to follow us on all of our social media channels. And please follow me on A Medina Wildcat. Make sure you use that hashtag Wellness Wednesdays AZ when you post. My name is Anne Marie Medina. I am the Director of Corporate and Community Relations for the University of Arizona Health Sciences here at our beautiful Tucson campus. We also have Caroline Berger, who is in that position up at our Phoenix campus, and Allison Otu, who serves as our Executive Director. We'd love to hear from you today. We want to make sure this is very interactive, so make sure you leave those questions in the chat box. Just click that chat screen at the bottom of your screen, and we'll ask those questions to our presenters at the end of the session. Don't forget, we'll send you that follow-up email. There'll be an evaluation, there'll be links and resources to everything presented today, a link to today's video, and also links to all of our past sessions. So please allow me to introduce our speakers for the day. Dr. Dan McDonald is the director of the Take Charge America Institute for Consumer Financial Education and Research, an extension specialist in financial education, and a University of Arizona Distinguished Outreach faculty member. He's worked at the University of Arizona for 20 years, designing, implementing, and evaluating community programs. Dr. McDonald received his doctorate in family studies and human development from the Norton School in 2000. In his current capacity, Dr. McDonald oversees the Take Charge CATS program at the University of Arizona, the Wildcat Corps, which is part of AmeriCorps, which is a statewide program, and supports the Extension Financial Education program that's offered in 5 rural counties in the state. We also have Ashley LeBaron, who is a doctoral candidate in family studies and human development at the University of Arizona. Her research focus is family finance, including couple finance and financial socialization. Ashley has published 23 peer-reviewed articles and is on the editorial board for the Journal of Family and Economic Issues. She is co-chair of the Family Financial Wellbeing Focus Group for the National Council on Family Relations and is co-chair of the Finance Topic Network for the Society for the Study of Emerging Adulthood. Well, welcome, Dan and Ashley. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can see that we're not having any technical difficulties. Good afternoon, everyone. We are very pleased to be here and be a part of Wellness Wednesday. Thank you, Anne Marie, for inviting us to do that. Today's topic is talking with your children about difficult financial times. Specifically, we're going to talk about the stress that results from financial difficulties that's caused in families and how we can communicate with our children about financial difficulties in a way that reduces the stress for our children and maybe even help our own stress at the same time. I'm joined by Ashley LeBaron, who I will say is just an outstanding doctoral candidate in the Department of Family Studies and Human Development at the University of Arizona. Ashley will share her research findings on what's called financial socialization of children, but basically how we teach our kids about money. She has some really wonderful tips for everybody today. I'll also share some resources available through the Take Charge America Institute for Consumer Financial Education and Research, as well as other resources that are really available throughout the state from Arizona Cooperative Extension. But first, let me set the stage for what we're going to discuss today. As though we need any reminder about this, parents and families are just under extreme stress, especially over the past 7 to 8 months. I don't think anybody needs to be reminded of that. Some, of course, have been experiencing this for much longer, having chronic economic stressors in their lives. hopefully for most of us, the financial stress that we're experiencing right now will be temporary and short term. It's hard to tell how long that will be at this point, which induces stress. People have lost their jobs, loss of income, substantial reductions in income. Here at the university, many of us are experiencing furloughs. Even if you're not experiencing those financial situations at this period, you may still be stressed by all sorts of things, but just the uncertainty of what's going to happen, how long this is going to last. Will it get worse before it gets better? I'm supposed to advance my slide here and I forgot to do that. I got so involved in introducing this, but there are other factors. Financial factors are some that are prominent right now, but certainly there are political stressors that are occurring, social stressors, environmental stressors that are, elevating the stress in our lives and maybe impacting our relationships with our spouse, partners, other relatives, family, friends, and of course, our children as well. But I'm here to say it's not all doom and gloom, okay? Thankfully, while there are risk factors that elevate stress, there are also protective factors that could reduce stress in our lives, thankfully. I do think that Wellness Wednesday is perhaps a protective factor for all of us. But next, let me describe this framework called the Family Stress Model that helps researchers and others really think about financial stressors and other stressors and how they relate to family functioning. This model was developed by a researcher named Rand Conger. He was at Iowa State for a long time and then at UC Davis. I'm going to talk about those large arrows going down the middle there first. This was developed first to look at economic stressors, but has been since used for a number of different stressors on family functioning. But today we'll talk about financial strain, which could lead to parental psychological stress. That's that second arrow there. We'll just call it parents stressed. This could be also related in the lower box there to our relationships with our partners, spouses, and so forth. There could be adverse effects from that, from those stresses, which then could lead to adverse parenting practices. So this could just be, and we all experience this type of thing, but in times of extreme stress, it just amplifies our behaviors. And so we may be less patient with our children. We may be distracted and not be able to provide them with the attention we would normally provide to them. We may just be less attentive to their needs. So this could have adverse effects on their behaviors. Okay, so they may withdraw physically and emotionally due to that. They may act out. So their behaviors may change as a result of how we are parenting. Now, let me find my place here. So you see that there are risk factors sort of pressing down on us, and these could be any number of risk factors in our environment. The neighborhoods we live in, there may be high crime or so forth, other factors that are pressing down on us that again, just exacerbate the situation, the stressful situation. But as I mentioned, there are protective factors, and protective factors could be things such as our family support. Darn it, go back to that, our family support. It could be resources in our community that we avail ourselves of. As I said, Wellness Wednesday is a protective factor in my mind. Our own resilience and the resilience that our children possess as well are protective factors, as well as our attitude and how we respond to stressful situations. Now I'm going to pass it on to Ashley LeBaron, who's going to talk very specifically about some protective factors in how we communicate to our children about stressful times and the tips that she has to help us all out and to reduce those stresses. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Ashley.
Great. I will share my screen. There we go. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. So as Dan was saying, talking with your kids about money during financially difficult times can help to ease their stress. You can also use financial difficulties as an opportunity to teach your kids really important things about finances. And your open communication and intentional teaching will benefit them throughout their lives. So multiple studies have looked at different sources of financial learning for kids, and all the studies have found that kids learn more about finances from their parents than they do from school, like financial literacy classes, work experience, media, peers. So if we want our kids to be prepared for financial adulthood, it's really important that as parents, we are providing that financial learning. It's hard to replace the influence of every day for 18 years with a one semester financial literacy class. So given that, research has found again and again a very strong link between frequent positive parent-child financial discussions while a child is growing up with that child's future financial knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. And actually, subsequently, their well-being in many facets of their life, because as we're all experiencing right now, stress doesn't just stay in its own bubble, and financial stress impacts people's relationships, their physical and mental health, their academic success, and we could go on. So as parents, our role is very important in helping kids through these difficult financial times and just teaching them about money as they grow up. So an analogy I want to use here, well, if we think about it, what are the two topics that, historically have been thought of as taboo to talk about? What is inappropriate to talk about? And it's sex and money, right? And so because of that, in the past, parents are getting better, but we still need to be careful to avoid this attitude of kind of a very awkward one and done talk to kids when it's way too late and not actually that helpful anymore, and then that's it, and we never talk about it again. So we typically think about that with sex, but parents can have the same attitude about money, that it's not the kid's business, that money's something that we shouldn't talk about. And that's just very detrimental to the kids as they're dealing with this stress and just as they're preparing for their later financial life. So this is what we want to avoid, is a sit down, one-time talk mindset. So instead, some principles for positive parent-child financial discussion are just to be open. Be open with kids about your finances and about what's going on. You could think of lots of benefits of this, one of which is that kids can get a realistic idea of how far a certain income could go, how much things cost, etc. Another principle for talking to your kids about money is to share your experiences and stories with money. the good ones and maybe the bad ones. Maybe you have some regrets financially, some mistakes you made, and kids can learn some really valuable lessons from all your experiences. You can plan sit-down lessons and conversations, specifically thinking about age and developmentally appropriate conversation. So, start when they're little. A question I get often is, well, how young should I start talking to them about money? And the answer is just as soon as possible. Toddlers, research has found that toddlers are already learning basic lessons and attitudes about money. So you can start early, but obviously you're not going to talk to a toddler about, the different types of an IRA or a 401k. So talk to kids about money openly, frequently, but do so to a level that is appropriate for their age, that they will understand and actually care about. So if your kid is transitioning to being a teenager, that might be a great time to start talking with them about credit cards, slowly giving them some experience with credit cards, so that when they're suddenly on their own, they're not just, suddenly free with a credit card with no knowledge about that or experience with it. One way to get these sit-down conversations in is they're called family financial councils. So some families, this tends to work really well. Families have a regular set time that the whole family sits down and talks about money and the family budget. So this could be once a month, could be a few times a year. It's kind of up to you and what would be best for your family. But this is a time to go through the family's financial goals, get everyone on the same page, and some really important teaching can go on during those lessons. Teach on the fly too. So, it's great to be intentional and to think of some specific conversations to have at specific times, but take advantage of just the day-to-day interactions you have with your kids. So if you're at the grocery store, teach them about comparing, price per ounce, or, have them pay for the groceries, give them the money or the credit card, have them just experience that transaction. If you need to go to the bank, or if you're going to shop for cars, take your kids with you and talk to them about it while you're there. And then involve kids in financial decisions. So it's obviously good if you as parents have a budget, and it's great that if kids can be aware of that. It's even better if you talk to them about your budget. But then it's best if the kids are actually involved in the creation, implementation, and review of at least some aspects of your family budget, because that's just really good practice for them. And as humans, we tend to learn by doing, and that's how knowledge is kind of instilled and becomes behaviors and attitudes. And then finally, encourage questions. Hopefully your kids, because of the way that you talk to them about money, hopefully they know that they can come to you with questions, and that money is something that you're happy to talk to them about, that you like talking to them about, and so that they will come back to you again when they do have questions. Just an example from my own life of from my parents. So when I was about probably 10-ish, my parents sat down, me and my siblings. I don't know if we had been acting a little bit spoiled or just not grateful enough recently, or maybe my parents just thought this would be a good exercise. But they sat us down and they got out the Monopoly game and counted out for us how much my parents brought home in a month, how much money they made in 1 month. And as like a 10-year-old, I was like, wow, that's so much money. But then my parents, they took that stack and they said, okay, they counted out, here's how much it costs for us to live in this house every month. This is how much our mortgage is every month. And the pile was much smaller. And then they said, this is how much our utilities are just to be warm and be able to turn on the lights. And they counted out that. So this is how much we pay for our cars every month and for gas and insurance. They said this, this is how much we pay for food every month. And as they went through their budget, the pile got smaller and smaller. And then once they got through our necessities, there was a little bit left. And they use that as an opportunity to say, you know, we're really lucky that we're able to meet all these needs and we have a little bit left. But look how big this little pile is. This is why we say no to things. And this is why we need you to be, you know, more grateful and not just expect to get everything you want. And that was just very eye-opening as a kid to be aware of how much life costs and you know, where the things that I thought I needed and wanted, that has to come from somewhere. And that it also kind of made us bond as a family and think of it more as we're in this together. You know, we're getting these needs met together, and you know, what do we want as a family? And so that's a great example. And then just to end, so I've kind of tried to drill here the idea to just be open with kids. And maybe some of you are like totally on board, like, yes, I'm ready to just talk to my kids all about money and about our situation. But some of you might have some worries, which is very common. It's very normal for parents to be wary of being too open with kids about money. So I'm going to go through 3 of the most common worries that parents have about being open with their kids about money. And then you can think of your own rebuttal of, you know, playing devil's advocate, like, oh, well, why is that worry? It might be valid, but why should I not let that guide my behavior? But I'll give a rebuttal to these as well. So the first is, you might say, my kids will ask me money questions I don't know the answer to, and then they'll know how incompetent I am. A rebuttal to this might be, well, you want them to be more financially competent than you are, right? So find out the answers together and treat it as an opportunity for both of you to learn and for you to bond with your child. Another worry that we hear is, my parents will share our family's financial information with other people. This is a valid concern, but a rebuttal might be, okay, so share that information about your family's finances when kids are of appropriate age and maturity. Just ask them not to share, and then you just have to trust them. And to add on to that, thinking about the worst case scenarios is probably not that bad. You know, even if your kid goes and tells the neighbor kid how much money you make, you might want to think about why you think that would be so awful. You know, what is the worst case here, and is it really worth not being open with your kids and not helping them learn these really valuable lessons just because you're afraid that they might share? And finally, telling the kids about our financial struggles will stress them out. This is probably the most valid concern, but hopefully what Dan and I talked about today helps you see why this is not necessarily the case. So yes, make sure it's very important for kids to understand, especially when they're younger. They might not understand this intuitively, so it's important to say it, that the burden is not on their shoulders and the struggles are for you as the parents to work out. But the kids can learn from your struggles, and they might be able to help out too, such as by being more understanding when you say no to purchases. And I'll add too that when there's stress in the home, especially financial stress, the kids are feeling it anyway. They're aware of it. Even if they don't know exactly what's going on, they're still experiencing the consequences of that stress. And so by not talking about it, it almost compounds it. And by talking about these things openly, it can kids can start working through it and know that it's okay and not just this mysterious thing that's, you know, going to end in horribly. And you can kind of help them talk through it and help them know that even if, you know, things look a little differently right now and we have to kind of adjust our finances right now, we'll all be okay in the end. So that is it. Let me stop sharing and I'll turn it back over to Dan.
Thank you, Ashley. That was very insightful and I'm sure validating for a lot of people. You know, people, I think, know these things intuitively. It's hard when you're stressed to really think that clearly about them, but I think this really helps people understand how to respond and really to create teachable moments. So I'm going to go ahead and get to my slides again, and I will. Please advance. So I'm going to share, there we go. Share some of the resources that are available here in the state of Arizona through the university, specifically through the Take Charge America Institute, as well as Cooperative Extension. So I imagine that we have people viewing this from across the state, know that there's a Cooperative Extension office in every single county. Many of them will have programs like the ones I'm going to talk about. And since we've been sort of forced to have things online, there's many of these workshops are more accessible now because they'll be available online. So the first I want to mention is a parenting workshop, a series on child behavior management. There are several. One I know is called Positive Parenting. There are also family resource centers that are located in a number of the counties, usually affiliated with local school districts. I believe Anne Marie will be sending these links to everyone as well. Secondly, financial literacy workshops. And I just want to say, Ashley, the example that you gave of your parents' lesson, I'd like to think they learned that at a cooperative extension workshop, perhaps. I don't know. I'm going to steal that, though. I think we should incorporate that into our lessons. There's some lessons are just 1 hour long. Some are a series. You can check out that website, the link, and check out the calendar of what's available. Other resources are available in the Take Charge America Institute. You can go there and it can direct you to many different places. And then lastly, the Take Charge Cats. This is a youth program. We currently offer it in middle and high schools, primarily in the greater Tucson area. But once again, because it's online, it's something that can be available more broadly to youth programs. This is generally done not individually, but in a group. So we'll work with teachers in classrooms or youth serving organizations that have like an after-school program or something along those lines. And then finally, our contact information. Feel free to get in touch with either one of us. Remember that Ashley LeBaron is a student and needs to finish her dissertation, so don't bother her too much, but feel free to bother me. I'm available and willing to help you out in any way that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I know we're getting close to the time. I don't know if there are questions. Anne Marie, do we have any?
Actually, Dan, there are a couple of questions that I have for you. Ashley, first of all, thank you for sharing that wonderful story about how you learned about finances. You know, when you talk about sharing information with your kids and you worrying about them stressing out about it, you hear a lot of times about how kids later on say how thankful they are that their parents included them in those decisions. Because if you have a little extra money and the kids are able to make that decision on how do we want to spend it or how do we want to save it or what's important to us. And also knowing about the cost of things. So you're stuck at home. So the kids want to watch Netflix. They want to watch Apple TV. They need to know how much those things all cost so that they can then say, okay, this is what we want. So if we can only have one. But those are lessons that teach them later on when they leave home what they're going to need to be able to do. Because so many kids leave home thinking, I just want to move out. And they don't realize the cost that's involved in doing that. And so learning early and learning to budget, it also makes kids say, I want to help. So how can I help? Not necessarily go out and get a job, but it's helping to make decisions about how things are going to be spent or knowing not to ask for things when you know that they can't afford it. So I think that's really important. And I appreciate all of those things that you shared and the resources that are available because there's so many out there.
I can jump in on that, Anne Marie. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to build on that because I think there are teachable moments and especially around needs versus wants. And I think looking at what we do for recreation and entertainment is an excellent way to do that. And it is, I think it's really helpful for families to look at what they're expending. Some of those but on television, you know, the Netflix and that type of thing may be kind of hidden costs that we don't even realize we're spending each month. And we may want to examine, do we really watch this? Bring the kids in on part of that conversation. That would be an excellent way to learn from it.
Well, thank you both so much. This was really informative and I think very important for parents. And I know that there'll be a lot of follow-up comments, and so I will get those to you. So I'm going to go back and share my screen. And again, thank you for joining us, both Dan and Ashley. We really appreciate it. And moving on, we just want to share with you an upcoming session. Please send us your photos of those wonderful pets of yours. We've got the Humane Society coming on the 21st. They're going to talk about the benefits of pet partners. And so we want you to share those photos. That's my grand puppy, Wren. She's only 6 months old and 42 pounds. She's going to be a big girl. So please send those photos to me at annmariemedina@arizona.edu, and I'll provide that in the email so that you have that address. Don't forget, we do have a little change in our sessions coming up in October and November. We'll have a session October 14th and 21st, November 4th and 18th. And again, just a little tease about that December event, details coming soon. So until then, on behalf of us all here at the University of Arizona Health Sciences, we appreciate you joining us. Be safe, be well, and of course, bear down and mask up. See y'all later. Have a good one.